Hey, what is up, everyone? It's Theguyhere, and welcome back to another episode of Themindhere, the bi-weekly podcast where I talk about new knowledge I've learned, projects I'm working on, and current events. Topics may be random, but I hope that with each episode you can come away with a fresh perspective on the universe. Welcome to all of you who are here for the first time. If you like my content and want to see more, please consider subscribing. All right, so today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that I felt became relevant throughout the past weeks and might be something that would be useful to you guys from the various podcasts that I listen to and the books I've read. And the first one here is from a podcast series by a person named Rob Dial. The podcast is The Mindset Mentor with Rob Dial. So Rob Dial is a motivational speaker and like a life coach. He does a podcast episode where he talks about ways to get yourself motivated and just various other things that might help you with your life. So if you're interested in that, he's got some really unique perspectives on things. And I think he's a wonderful person to get yourself motivated and just to follow along with him. But in one of his episodes, he talked a bit about believing in yourself and taking action. And specifically, he talked about that, how you don't need to believe in yourself in order to take action. So what does this mean? From what I took from his explanation and how he described things, this is my interpretation of it. He described it in a way where he talked about combating the self-fulfilling prophecy where you say you don't have confidence in your ability to do something. And because you don't have confidence in your ability to do that thing, your actions that you take are not necessarily conducive to success in whatever that you wanted. And because they are not successful, the results that you get back are not stellar, you then further drop your confidence, and that continues. And it's a not virtuous cycle. It's a pretty terrible cycle to go into. It's a downward cycle. But with this idea that you don't need to believe in yourself to take action, what's doing here is even though you don't believe in yourself, doesn't necessarily mean you don't take actions, because sometimes it's the lack of action that's not showing you that you can do things. So if you take actions, and even though it might fail quite often, you don't need to believe in yourself to go and do something, to go and go do your chores, or to go and bring that last book over to your friend's house or something like that. You don't need to believe in yourself in order to take actions. And because of that, you can have a way that sort of breaks that cycle of that self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's pretty important, because sometimes these cycles, while you're in it, it might seem like impossible to escape. But if you find a way to break it with something like this, then you can start building up your experience, building up practice in whatever you want to do. And because of that, you can then start gaining confidence and sort of turn that cycle around. So if, let's say, you really wanted to play piano, but whenever you go to the piano, it just doesn't come out right. You don't need to believe in yourself to go and practice. And as you practice, as you start learning, and as you start just getting a better feel of things, you will start to improve. And when you start seeing that improvement, it then says, oh, okay, I can do something like this. And because of that, then you'll be more motivated and take more actions and do more of what's getting you to that success. So it's a good way to sort of break a downward spiral. And that's something that might be relevant depending on where you are in your in your schooling, in wherever you are in your life, where you might be in a high phase where you're getting a lot done, in which case it's something that's good to know in case things start to turn sour. And if things are sour right now, if things aren't going as well as they planned or as well as you want it to be, you can still take actions even though you don't feel like you can do things. And because of that, you can then start to hopefully generate some better results and pull yourself back up. So hopefully that's something that might be helpful to you guys. And the second thing I wanted to talk about, second idea, comes from a person called Nir Eyal. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that last name, so apologies for that. But he is the author of a book called Indistractable, and he's a sort of like he studies psychology, and he studies how you can be more productive, and looks at that. And specifically in some of his literature that I liked, he has a different way of framing distractions, something that we're all very familiar with. But when we think of distractions, we tend to think of them as something that sort of pulls us away from what we want to do, right? If we want to study, then that latest anime show, or that latest video game, or whatever it may be, maybe a friend's calling, or maybe just some food, is pulling you away from what you want to do, right? That's what we think of as a distraction, something that sort of pulls us away. But he thinks of it differently. He frames it as something that distractions are sort of a consequence of avoiding something painful. So the difference there, it might be subtle, but it's the difference between a push and a pull. We're used to thinking of distractions in a pull sense, where they pull us away from what we want to do. So the focus is then on the distraction itself, whereas he frames it as a push away from that activity that we wanted to do in the first place. And the distraction is sort of just something that happens to be the easiest thing to do besides the activity that we're pushed away from. So when the focus then shifts to the source of the activity, that activity we want to do, we then start questioning that activity. Is there a way to frame it in our minds to make it not as painful? Is there a way to get it done with, so then you no longer have to engage in it? Or is there a reason why we have to continue engaging in this activity? Maybe there's something more fundamental about the path that we've taken. Maybe we need to take a different route altogether. So those are the questions that we ask when we focus on the source of the pain that we're trying to avoid with the distractions. Because if we focus on the distractions, then we might start going into, okay, how do I avoid these distractions? But if the distractions aren't the things that are a source of the issue, then you'll just find another thing to get yourself distracted with. For example, in classrooms, if students are on their phones all the times, you can ban the phones, but if the class is just painfully boring, right? If the students are not feeling like this class is worthy because either the professor is not teaching it well, or because the material is just terrible, or maybe it's too hard or too easy, whatever it may be, if you don't solve that issue, even if you ban phones or ban whatever, it's not going to solve the issue. They're just going to get distracted in a different way. And even if you eliminate all distractions, are they really going to be focused in the class? What was the whole point? What was the whole purpose of this class, right? So these are things you want to consider, and it might start help you asking better questions and solve the root issue, rather than sort of doing a whack-a-mole with the various distractions that pop up. If you focus on the source of the issue, which is the activity that you quote-unquote wanted to do, then that might help you solve a few things. So that's just a different framing exercise that might help you out, because for the most part, most distractions aren't addictive in the sense that it's going to pull you in. Chances are it's something that you just default to when you don't want to do something. So think about that, and just overall have an open mind with these things, because it might be hard to wrap your head around or to get that perspective in mind at first, but I feel like these new perspectives are able to open up a new world and maybe find a solution where the old perspectives were not able to achieve before. So hopefully something useful for you guys to think about. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. It's a quick one, and embarrassingly, this is the second time that I recorded it, because the first time I didn't set the mic right, so it wasn't picking up through this mic. It was picking up through one of the other mics, rather, whether it be my phone or my laptop, but not this one. So bad audio quality, and of course, not acceptable for a podcast. So unfortunately, I had to redo it, and but then I was able to rethink about a few things and make things more streamlined. But anyhow, that's going to be a wrap up of a pretty quick episode. I've been working on a project, a Minecraft plugin, and it's close to finishing up, but I have a few things to wrap up in there and finalize. If there's no update or a video about it on my channel, then I'll talk a little bit about it next episode. But for now, thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate the support you all have given me throughout this process. If you found this episode or this podcast in general to be insightful or just thought-provoking in any way, feel free to share it with anyone who you think might be interested in this or might benefit from this. It really means a lot to me, and it helps out and grows the community. But thank you all so much. Stay humble, and I'll see you all in the next episode.